Good evening. My name is Eve Niedergang. I'm one of the council members and the chair of the Princeton Cannabis Task Force. I'm going to give it a couple of more minutes. We were waiting for some of our panelists, and I will just wait for members of the public who are interested in coming in and hearing. Give them a few more minutes, and then we'll get started. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I just wanted to take a moment and introduce my council colleagues, Council President Leticia Fraga and Council Member Michelle Perrin-Lambros. And I'm going to give some brief outlines of where we are at this point, and then hand it over to Michelle, who will run through a brief PowerPoint presentation. But the main point tonight is to get input from you and to hear from members of the public who maybe have been following this in our local press, but are not familiar with the intricacies of what we've been doing, talking about, and thinking, and just to give you an update on that. So let's see where we are. All right. So the Cannabis Task Force has been meeting since April and has been very focused on meeting the deadline in August for introducing an ordinance, which we were not able to meet, but we've been focused. We were not able to make that August 21st deadline. We're continuing to focus on the outlines of an ordinance that would allow some aspects of cannabis in Princeton. The issue on the table here is not whether we'll have cannabis in Princeton or not, because it is a legal substance in New Jersey, and New Jersey law allows delivery everywhere. So anybody in Princeton, once the legal aspects of the business are up and running, will be able to get cannabis through delivery, and municipalities cannot place any restrictions on that at all. So the issue in our plate is not whether there'll be cannabis in Princeton, which there will be, both legal and illegal. The issue on our plate is whether basically what we see, what the task force sees as the benefits of allowing cannabis in town are compelling, which I think the task force does. And the task force, as I said, has been focusing on recommendations for an ordinance, focusing primarily on retail. We also have been, especially today, having a conversation about racial justice and social equity, which are really an important part of what cannabis legalization is about, is to deal with some of the harms of the war on drugs and to try to take steps towards addressing some of that damage. And that's a conversation we will be continuing to have long after tonight. And we welcome your input on that as well. We also will be moving on in the future to talking more about how to educate Princetonians about of all ages about legal cannabis. So again, I'm going to turn this over to Michelle. She's going to give a brief presentation, and then we welcome your questions. You'll have to raise your virtual hand. If you are not sure how to do that, please post a message in the chat, and Adam, maybe you can respond to those and tell people where they might find their virtual hand. Okay, and that's it. Michelle, take it away.
Thank you, Eve and Leticia, and thank you to all the task force members that have been working really hard. They're here. You see them as panelists right now. I'm going to be sharing, and thank you everyone who's participating too. I'm going to be sharing my screen and sharing what really the task force has come up with and has been discussing. So just give me one moment. Okay. So this is our discussion, and this is really a discussion this evening that we'd like to have. So I'm going to share some of these ideas and suggestions that the task force has. You see a picture from Oregon City of a front of a dispensary here. So the first area that we were looking at is areas where the dispensaries could be allowed throughout, through our zoning. But even if we zone for a dispensary to be allowed in a particular zone, there's no guarantee that that dispensary would be there. So landlord, space availability, rental prices, parking, transportation, other governmental regulations, these were all factor into prospective business owner decisions. But by ordinance, the town can cap the total number of dispensaries regardless of the number of zones. So right now, we're looking at the task force is considering having a total cap townwide of 3 dispensaries. And we'll talk a little bit about what the thinking behind that is. So the zones that we're looking at, you can see on the map, we've identified, and not scientific terms, but 206 North, and which is where Bottle King is right near the border with Cherry Valley Road. And then there's 206 South, which is the area of where the Northfield Bank is at the intersection of 206 and Cherry Hill Road. There's the shopping center. There's Witherspoon Street, which is Witherspoon North or Witherspoon Jackson area. That would just be on Witherspoon Street and not in the adjoining roads. We're also looking at Nassau Street, Palmer Square, which is the central business district, an area we call Jugtown, which is the corner of the intersection of Harrison and Nassau Street. And then the Dinky area, which wouldn't be where the Dinky Bar is, because that area, it would, the restaurants are owned by the, there's nothing really available there, but there is a zone between Metro North and where Skillman Furniture are. So there's a few buildings there. So we've kind of identified the zones, but again, this is totally preliminary in terms of what would be available. That. Okay, so some of the operational criteria that we've looked at in terms of determining these zones is we're really concerned with access for economically disadvantaged residents. So whether parking's available, whether it's walkable is really an important factor. If there's public transit, which, like, for instance, we just mentioned the Dinky area, so you have the train as well as access for cars and such, and then access to technology. So we've determined that not to require a by appointment only strategy or other restrictions, because those would require things like technology through the use of phones and computers, and we don't want to be exclusionary for those who are economically disadvantaged, may lack resources, or the elderly or disabled that may be not able to navigate that technology. Also taking into consideration that residents will have a wide variety of needs in terms of their shifts, in terms of their lifestyle, in terms of childcare and so on. So we wanted to offer 7 days a week, 9 to 10, in terms of hours for operation. In terms of the size, we really feel that that can be something that the market forces will drive in determining that in terms of the rental costs. And so we did not put a maximum or minimum square footage required. So, we're leaving that open, but we are looking at location restrictions that would not be within 200 feet of a school, similar to what a liquor license is. And we're also possibly thinking that we would restrict dispensaries, not having 2 dispensaries side by side, but that they would have to be at least 200 feet apart. And again, we're looking for feedback, but I'll go through the criteria and then we can get your feedback on this recommendations. So one of the things that's really important to the task force, if I may, is say that we want to be able to have a ranking and be able to weight the applications based on whether or not they would be a local resident application. We want to have preference for local, and we really want to have preference for minority ownership. Now, legally, the only way we can do that type of ranking is if we have an excess of applications versus the amount of licenses that we have. So in other words, if we have five dispensary licenses available and only 3 applications, we wouldn't be able to rank. But if we have more, if we have 5 applications or more, and we have 4, say, licenses available, then we'd be able to rank them based on this criteria. This is an example from Bayonne, and this is right out of their ordinance. And so I just wanted to share this because this shows how they have tied their applications to being whether or not it's they have to have one of the shareholders have to have proof of residency for 5 or more years. They're looking at whether or not they have a demonstrated commitment to diversity in their ownership composition, and also in terms of their hiring practices. So this is a really good example of how they've been able to incorporate some of the things that are really top of mind for us, and in terms of making sure this has a social justice and equity component. So getting down to, one of the things that can really help is obviously the municipalities have a 2% taxable revenue on all cannabis retail sales. And I want to say, to just to emphasize what my colleague said earlier, Eve, the deliveries that come to Princeton, if they are not located in Princeton, we don't see any revenue from that. So it would actually have to be a located business here in order to have the 2% taxable revenue. Now, we can, as a town, allocate all or part of that revenue, to social justice causes. And we're looking at including communities of color that have been most impacted by the war on drugs. And this is something that, that we are talking about, that we're exploring, and we're talking with experts. And we really want to open this up to community input on what that criteria would look like and how best we could allocate it. I'll share some ideas. These are some social equity investments that we could do in the neighborhoods. So investing in our communities that have historically targeted by the war on drug. These are some examples. One of the potential areas is reentry services like job training, criminal record expungement. In Evanston, in their model, they provided Black residents with housing and economic development benefits. In Amherst, they're putting it towards reparations to Black residents. So this tax would be just one of their revenue streams of a program that they're doing. And in Rochester, they're considering a universal basic income to help narrow the white-Black wealth gap. So right now, it's a tremendous amount of work that the task force is doing in researching what other communities have done. When I've gone through the criteria and operational criteria and zoning criteria, a lot of the recommendations that the task force have made have been very thoughtful and researched in terms of what is happening in other communities. So going back to some of the criteria, another piece is the visual criteria. So signage is regulated to some extent by state law. So words like cannabis, weed, and so on is not as prohibited. There'll have to be certain lighting that will be necessary for safety, but this will be regulated within our commercial zone ordinances. So nothing garish and bright and all that. It was going to be within the structure and the types of businesses that we have in Princeton. In addition to those criteria, we also, if it's in a commercial zone that's historic, in the historic districts, they would be also regulated by signage, and lighting would be regulated through the Historic Preservation Commission. So that's it. I have some examples of the visual impact from both the outside look and the inside in retail establishments. And again, a lot of research has gone into this. So I'd like to share some visuals of what this could look like in Princeton. So this right here is pharma. That's a dispensary. You see it just kind of blends in. This is the green solution. So very discreet. I thought this was a pretty cool. This is from Marshall, Michigan, Common Citizen. And then some really cool inside scapes. So you can see there's a whole variety and range of creativity and looks and feel of something that could be, some cases, this looks like Warby Parker to me, but, and this looks like a place where you pick up a deli sandwich, or, and this looks like a cafe. So there's just a variety of different ideas. That's something, and this is rather elaborate, something that maybe you don't, it looks like a bank or a hotel. And this looks like, this reminds me, I put this last because this reminds me of the NASA and very world. So we'd like to open up to conversation. I'd like to get your feedback, and we, want to just open it up to see what people think. And we have a few things that are pending issues that we'd like to, talk about as well. One thing that we're considering is, do we also have other licenses available, and we haven't considered those yet, but we'd like to talk about delivery, cultivation, lab testing, and R&D, manufacturing. We have not really decided whether or not we would allow on-prem consumption, not one-prem, but on-prem consumption on premise. One of the things that would be compelling to allow on-premise consumption is that it does have a social justice aspect to it, because certain people wouldn't be able to, if you live in federally subsidized housing, you wouldn't be allowed to smoke in your home. So this would give them an availability, but then it may also create some other problems in terms of, what we would regulate. And what else? Oh, and then whether or not we're going to combine medical and recreational dispensaries, and also what we want to do about micro licenses. So we're thinking maybe 1 micro license and 2, but again, this is open to discussion. So that's kind of where we are right now. And I can stop sharing unless anyone wants me to go back to any. I can always start sharing again if you need me to go back to any of the slides, but that's it. That's the work that the task force has done. As you can see, the past 6 months or so, it's been a considerable amount of work, and we're just open to your questions and comments.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Eve. As we open it to the public, as we've been saying, the purpose of this meeting is to hear from you, the public, to solicit feedback, and also if there's any questions that we can answer, that we have answers to, we'd be happy to respond. I just want to ask that for those who wish to comment, you've already been instructed to raise your virtual hand, and you will be allowed by a moderator to turn on your speaker to speak. But we also wish for you to please state your name and where you live. And if you're a Princeton resident, and if you don't want to wish to give your full address, just say your street name is fine. But we are interested in knowing who we're hearing from, who the feedback is coming from. So with that, Adam, do you want to just let us know who's first and let them in?
Sure. Yes, we have Piper Griffin coming in.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, Piper, we can. Thank you.
Sorry, I can't see myself on the screen, so I wasn't sure. My name's Piper Griffin, and I live very close to Princeton Shopping Center. I live in the Governor's Lane townhome community, and so I walk there every day. And I am a social worker. I'm licensed, but I stay at home with my children right now. I have 2 daughters, ages 4 and 8. And I take my daughters there every day, and oftentimes multiple times a day. And I have not paid attention to this issue much at all until I saw in an article in the Town Topics yesterday, they listed the 6 zones that you're considering. And I completely understand that these marijuana dispensaries are going to be around and are legal. I'm more concerned about marketing to children and adolescents and the conversations that I'm going to have with my young children every day. If there's a marijuana dispensary located at Princeton Shopping Center, just to give you a little bit of context, my 8-year-old is reading signs now, and it's a game we've been playing. And my 4-year-old is a pre-reader and recognizes pictures. And so I just wanted to explain, during this pandemic, we've had our kids at home a lot. My older daughter went to Littlebrook, which is the elementary school nearby, and they had half days of school and the rest of the day was remote. And so as a parent, Princeton Shopping Center was just a gift for my young children because there are so many activities for them there. And it was a way to get out. It's an open air shopping center with a courtyard. They do family movie nights there. That's where my daughters do ballet class. There's Rita's Frozen Custard. There's a bagel place. There are Lily Pies bakeries where you get mini pies. There's Blueberries where we get chocolate croissants. The Princeton Shopping Center shares a parking lot with a playground and 2 little league fields and a basketball court. That's the closest playground for me to walk to with my kids every day. And so I'm not against dispensaries being around at all. But I'm just so concerned about one going into that location because that is a family shopping center, and the structure of the center, it's like a rectangular donut with a courtyard in the middle, and all of the retail locations are very visible to people, and it's a shopping center that encourages, walking there from the neighborhoods around. There are parking lots, and it is on a busy road on North Harrison, but it's not an area that would be necessarily primarily car traffic. There is a bus stop there, but I see teenagers at Rita's Frozen Custard, at the basketball court there. The play structure is right there across the parking lot from Blueberries. My pediatrician's office is there. And so I'm just begging you to take that zone out. I don't know if you can, but this will drastically change the daily experience with my young children. And then I'm so sorry I'm going on. I just had 2 more things that I wanted to say. The limit of the not having a dispensary within 200 feet from a school, is there a way to add in playgrounds to that, to not have these dispensaries within a certain radius from a public playground or park? Because we know that marijuana is not good for a children's brain and development, or an adolescent's brain. Grown-ups can do whatever they want, but I just don't think that this is a healthy thing to market to young kids. And my kids are also going to see the marijuana leaf on the pictures. So I'm so happy you addressed the signage in your PowerPoint. And I really appreciate that you all are considering the signage and the lighting and the visual aspect. I am concerned about having really prominent marijuana leaves on the signage because my youngest, who's a pre-reader, you know, they pay attention to pictures. They notice the shape of a stop sign before they notice what it says. They see a happy looking leaf and they're going to think, oh, mommy, that's a plant store. Can we go buy a plant there? Or can we go, you know, I mean, it's very confusing. And my children are at the ages where they understand issues pretty much in black and white. And of course, I'll have these conversations with them about all of the gray areas, as any responsible parent would. But developmentally, there's only so much they can understand at different points. So I really just beg you to take that zone out. I know the real estate company, I think, that owns the shopping center is located out of town, I believe. I can't remember whether it's Atlanta or Massachusetts. And I'm sure that this is there's a lot of money involved. And I completely understand that it would be desirable for the company to have a retailer that would pay high rent. But this is a family shopping center. This Friday, there's going to be a movie night on the courtyard.
Piper, I think you've made your point. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. I think you've made your point. And let me address real quick a couple of points that you raised. Thank you so much for your comment and for your passion and your concern. We really appreciate that. As you said, the shopping center is owned by a single commercial company. So if we were to allow it in the shopping center, then that would be that we only allow in terms of zoning, and then they would have to make a decision about whether they wanted to do this or not, as you pointed out. I will point out to you, there is a liquor store in the shopping center. And in terms of the distance from any cannabis dispensary to, in this case, we followed the rules that are laid out for liquor stores. Cannabis dispensaries by law, and they are really rigid about this. You cannot get in there if you're under 21. There are really strict rules about that. They don't sell, to people. They don't try to advertise to children. There are very complicated restrictions about that. And certainly we would not approve any signage that would, appeal to children. But maybe some of my fellow panelists have a comment, a response to Piper. But again, thank you for your comments.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Colleen, do you want to? You're muted, Colleen. You're still muted. Okay.
So Piper, as a mother that has raised 4 kids in Princeton, I think that one of our goals here is to raise awareness and education about cannabis in our world, in our community, so that people that are of age can use it responsibly. And I think that we should also have the idea that we are, cannabis is being used in our community. And so to be using it responsibly and recreationally and not have addictions is like, like Eve said, I mean, there's liquor stores at the Princeton Shopping Center. And I think that we have to change the stigma around marijuana, because it's just another recreational drug. And if you educate our youth, if you inform them about what responsible use is and limit them to buying when they're legal adults, I think it's a plus for the youth in Princeton.
Thanks. Hugh, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, under state law, marketing to children is highly illegal. In addition, having advertising that explicitly targets children or has focuses on plants, it's also illegal under state law. Of course, we wouldn't allow it as a town. Just want to point out, not only is there a liquor store in the shopping center, But until recently, there was an open air bar
Yes.
in the middle of where these family events take place. And I mean, look, liquor's no more legal than cannabis. They're both legal under state law. They're both there for adults. They're both absolutely illegal for children. And unlike liquor, which has plenty of things like cotton candy vodkas and elaborate shots, jello shots, which are perfectly legal, none of that is allowed for cannabis. Not even the shapes of any purported edibles would be allowed to represent something that would be attractive to a child. And that's under state law. But alcohol was like, yeah, here, have a nice pink Cosmopolitan in front of everyone in the middle of family events. And it's no more, you know, that's just these things that are allowed for alcohol that we tolerate, which are also devastating for children if they get involved with them, are not things that are allowed for cannabis. Absolutely not. We would never have an open air smoking session in the middle of Princeton Shopping Center or anywhere for that matter.
Thank you, Hugh. Any of the other panelists want to add before we go on to the next question? And we'll be, taking notes on these questions and definitely discussing them at a later point as well.
And Steve, just before we move forward, we do want to hear from as many of you as we have time for. So we just want to ask folks to try to limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. And again, remind you to please let us know who you are and where you live. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. Adam, our next commenter.
Okay, this next speaker is a Princeton resident, no name.
Hi, Princeton resident. Can you introduce yourself and at least tell us what street you live on?
Yeah, this is Gabe Saltarelli, and I live on Nassau Street, near Harrison Street. I would like to first off agree with Piper with everything she said. In particular, I think it's very important to include parks and playgrounds and also school buses at school bus stops as places that should not be, we should not have dispensaries near. First of all, I'm opposed to having a dispensary in Princeton at all, but if we're going to have them, we should not have them in residential areas. We should not have them where our children are playing or going to school. And the idea that the buffer is 200 feet, I think is outrageous. It should be 1,000 feet. I hear what people are saying that we allow liquor stores, but liquor stores are not Scheduled I controlled substances like cannabis is under federal law. So I understand that New Jersey has, allows recreational use, but federal law still applies. And I don't think you can sell cannabis within 1,000 feet of a school under federal law. So the idea that we're going to try to allow that in Princeton is unsettling to me. If we're going to have it, we should have it on 206, on a highway, not in residential neighborhoods where our children have to be exposed to it. Why we would want to encourage our children to use Schedule I controlled substances is beyond me. Why we want to introduce that into our town for this 2% revenue, which is trivial relative to our budget, is insane in my view. I guess the last thing I want to say is that the use of the funds, the idea that we're going to allow marijuana into dispensaries, into our communities, and expose our children to this in order to fund social justice programs. If we want the social justice programs, fund them with our taxes. And if you're going to go raise money, if we really feel we need to sell drugs to raise money for the town, then reduce our taxes because our taxes are outrageous. So, and that's all I have to say.
Hey, thanks for your comments. Any response from one of our panelists? All right. Adam, do you want to bring on the next person?
Sure, bringing in David Jenkins.
Hi, you're on, David.
Hi.
Go ahead. Do you want to just
Hi,
tell us,
thank you, everyone.
David, you want to
appreciate the
just tell us
present-
what street you live on?
Sure, I'm in the Little Brook section of town, so a walk to the Harrison Shopping Center, and been a Princeton resident about 3 years now. And I couldn't agree more with two of the other respondents, Piper and the gentleman that just spoke. Also have children, also have an immediate family member whose life has been tragically altered by becoming a regular cannabis user in his late teens. And I just think this whole idea ought to be tabled and studied. And you should not be rushing it. I just want to also draw your attention to a Princeton Perspectives poll that publication put out. They asked 90 poll residents if they want cannabis dispensaries in town, and guess what? 60% said they do not want cannabis dispensaries in town. So I don't know what mandate the CTF and the town council members feel they have to push this through, but I think you need to do a survey. I think you need to reach out to the community. I think you need to take more time. And this notion of 200 feet goes against even some of the most, some of the earliest states. If you look at Denver, Colorado, their setback is 1,000 feet from any school bus or school property or childcare center. So I can tell, the other folks were also quite passionate about this topic. I think you're going to find lots of the town residents are willing to speak up if you give them the time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody want to respond to that? All right, we're taking notes. Adam, do you want to bring on the next resident?
Yes, bringing on King.
Hi, King, you can go ahead. Can you tell us where you live?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you very much. My name is Ching. I live in Gulick Road, northeast part of the Princeton. So I have a couple questions. I'm not sure if you can answer me or not. First, I remember in the slides, there's one page said that the purpose for to legalize the recreational use of marijuana is to lower the negative impact to the colored community during the war on drugs. So I assume everybody know that the issue is drugs, not the people, right? So this is my first question. So I don't know why we legalize that. Second one is what's the relationship? This also from the slides. What's the relationship of collect a 2% tax with the investment into the Black community? I think we have. I want to echo the third the previous gentleman mentioned. We already have high tax. We can use that money to investment in the Black community, and this 2%. I don't know what's the relationship between those two. And the third one is that nowadays we barely can smell the smell of the tobacco. But in the future, if we smell, just like in San Francisco, if we smell the marijuana, can we file complaint? And where we file the complaint? And the fourth question, I think the first the next comment is related to the first lady. I think her name is Pepper. She begged the panel to not put the dispensaries around the school or playground. I think as a taxpayer to the Princeton, we don't need to beg the panel to do that. We just show our opinion, right? And and also I have one suggestion. If we are going to collect 2% tax money, are we going to put this money onto like a public billboard or education to just like for the tobacco, they have all the sign on the tobacco, or they also have commercials to educate people to quit the smoking. Can we also have this money to spend on educated kids and do some commercial to let people quit smoking, use the marijuana or whatever the cannabis. So this is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I can respond, I think, to a couple of those. So Princeton has very strict rules about where you can smoke tobacco, and the same rules that apply to tobacco would apply to cannabis. So anywhere you can smoke tobacco, you would be allowed to smoke cannabis. And anywhere that you can't, you would not be allowed to smoke cannabis. And just want to say that although I think it sounds as if the Cannabis Task Force was driven to this decision, to their recommendation by the prospect of the 2% tax, but having been with them in many, many meetings, this is not the driving force. It's not about the money. It's about a product that many members of the panel feel has been unreasonably stigmatized, considering other similar products such as alcohol that are legal and widely used, and that also that the war on drugs and on marijuana in particular has had a really disparate effect on communities, and especially communities of color, on Black and Brown people. A number of members of the task force have themselves used medical cannabis to good result. And so some of them feel strongly that this is something that should be available to adults to use. So I realized that the presentation made it seem as if the work of this group was being driven by the 2% income, and that is just really not the case. So I just wanted to correct that impression if that was the case. Would anyone else like to take on any, Leticia, please?
I just wanted to add to one of the comments or questions that was made about where to report when someone smells marijuana. I would just caution that it is a legal substance, and if someone's smoking from their privacy of their own home and you smell it, I would certainly caution against reporting neighbors or someone that is legally within their right consuming.
Yeah. Thank you. And I was just going to clarify too that we were just giving some examples. There haven't been any decision or any recommendations that we've made yet in terms of the what we would do with the 2%. It has not driven the conversation. We really had the conversation first about the dispensaries without looking at that, but it was just some examples of what they're doing in other towns across the country to give us some ideas and just some opening for conversation. You're muted.
Yes, sorry. I was wondering if any other panelists wanted to comment. I will say that education is part of what this task force sees as in its purview, and that's something we will be focusing on more as time goes on. Remember that as of whenever it was, January 1st, I believe it's a legal substance in New Jersey, and nothing we do or say is going to change that. People will be using it, whether it's vaping, smoking, or other forms. That's the decision that 70% of the voters in New Jersey, and I think about 78% of the voters in Princeton made. So that's the world where we're living in now. Hugh, would you like to add something?
Yes, I'd just like to go back to one thing about the process that the council's undertaken with the task force. I think that first of all, the indicia of support for the legalization of cannabis coming out of Princeton, as you noted, was at a 78% of the voting population of Princeton, which is quite a mandate. But in addition, this process, the Cannabis Task Force, I mean, our calls are often open to the public, aren't they? People get on to the public.
To the public.
Always on, and how many months have we been at this now? And I mean, several months, and we still haven't come up with an ordinance. I mean, we're being extremely careful. I think we're consulting experts from in-state, out of state, across all varieties of professions to try and get this right in a way that reflects the voters' intention in this town, but to do it in extremely careful. And we actually opted out until such time as it makes sense. Why? To do this very, very careful work and to do what's happening tonight, which is consult the residents and carefully listen to them and make sure that whatever the decisions are made, that they reflect the aspirations of all of the residents as much as possible for this town. I mean, I really want to point out that this is extremely careful, exacting, hard work, and it's not done yet. There's still plenty of time to take information in, or there's still time to take information in.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyone else want to jump in? If not, we'll have Adam go to the next comment, please.
Okay, bringing in Wei Wu.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. We can. Can you just tell us where you live, what street you live?
Sure, absolutely. So this is David Wu. I live on the Cherry Valley Road, the 206, like one of the upper boundaries of the township. So I've been living here for over 10 years. My family and kids goes to school here. So I guess first of all, I think thank you for the panel for your hard work. As the previous gentleman said, I mean, you guys have done a lot of work, efforts to come up with recommendations, considerations. I think I really like to appreciate you. And, in the meantime, I guess I sort of watch your presentation, your criteria to set up the zone and all this. I feel like the panel has put a lot of consideration on how people can easily, or I mean, I say easily, how people can access to marijuana, like in the shop, in the location should be convenient to the, I guess some you call disadvantages of communities or economically disadvantages to make sure they can have easy access, or some people cannot use phone, right, apps to make water. So I think that the panel has done a great job to consider, to have consideration on the needs and access to marijuana. And just listening to all the other people, seems like there are other needs, right, in the community. Like, for example, you should stay away from my kids, for example, right? I don't know. I know there are some legal terms, requirements, but I think in the meantime, I heard other residents have like a different needs for marijuana, right? So I think my question or my recommendation for the committee is, when you develop the comprehensive criteria to set up those shops, can you also factor in the other sides of the needs? Right? It's not just the needs for those people that really need, like I think some panel mentioned, or Eva, right? You mentioned some panelists that may already benefit from marijuana. I'm sure there are needs, there are benefits of marijuana, and in the meantime, there are other, risks of marijuana, right? So there are other needs of the community. So actually, my first point is, when you develop the final criteria, can you factor in both sides of the story, right? So the both criteria, right? So I think that's one of my recommendation to the panel. My second one is Monica's question. I think they're saying we are going to have those shops open like 7 days per week, right? So every day they have to open. I don't know if this is I really don't know if there is any legal sort of implication on this. You have to have those stores open. I don't think even Apple Store, I don't think they're open 7 days, right? Even post office, I'm pretty sure they're not open 7 days per week, right? So, but I heard, I think that something says, 7 days per week, every day needs to open. I understand, for the benefits of the people who need them. And I just on the other hand, I want to know if you can force those business owners to open 7 days per week, right? And I guess those are two of my either questions or comments. And I think my last thought is, when we select the location of those stores, because I know there are enough people, benefits of marijuana, they really need them. Is there a way we can set up the location? It's really more benefit for those people, right? Because that's really the sort of targeted needs, right? And stay away from those people who do not, benefit from it. And it's just my sort of wide loud thought. Okay, thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. And Michelle, I know that you wanted to correct a misimpression that we left. So yeah, go ahead, please.
Just first of all, when you do zoning, the zoning ordinance, for instance, for hours of operation would be, we wouldn't restrict it, but we're not dictating what the hours would be of the operators. If the operator wanted to be, closed, only open later, they could do that. What we're allowing is that they could have that opportunity to be open. So in other words, we're not restricted. And it's the same thing with the zoning, just going back to some of the other comments. I mean, when we zone, doesn't mean that the district will appear there. It's up to a lot of other factors, market factors, the landlords, and what the market will bear. So we can only do that much, and then the rest is up to the market. That clarifies it.
So Michelle, your connection is a little bit unstable. So I'm just going to repeat. So basically, if we have an ordinance that allows something to be open 7 days a week, it doesn't mean that they have to be open 7 days a week. It just means they would be allowed to be open 7 days a week during those hours. And again, that zoning for something, if we zone to allow something in the central business district, a potential business might come in and say, parking is such a hassle here, why not go somewhere else where parking isn't going to be a hassle for our customers? So we just kind of lay the structure for allowing things, but we don't determine whether or not they happen. So thank you for your comments. Does anyone else want to respond to that? Okay, I know we have a few more people, including Adam. I see some repeat names, so let's let everybody who hasn't spoken yet get a chance to speak, and then we'll see if we have time for the people who, or they may have just forgotten to put their virtual hands down. So do you want to bring in the next person, please?
Yes, no problem. Bringing in Roger Pine.
Hi,
Hello.
Roger. Welcome. You can
Hey,
tell us where you live and go ahead.
sure. I live in Constitution Hill,
Okay.
in Princeton. I was born and raised in Princeton. Recently moved back, lived in New York City for about 20 years, but recently moved back. Just have a couple quick questions here. First is just regarding, has there been a determination of what the minimum threshold requirements would be for applicants for a license? And then also, you mentioned local preference for locals that are involved in the ownership of these dispensaries. Has there been any discussions or thought about local hiring requirements in terms of workers as well as local or MDE contractors in the build out of these dispensaries?
Yeah, I can start with that. So the only way we'll be able to rank and have criteria that we would like to have, which would give a preference for local residents and a preference for local hiring, would be if we have more applications than we have licenses.
Or if we have a micro license.
Or if we have a
That is
micro
one criteria.
Right. But your first question, I'm not sure I know the answer or understand it. You said what the threshold is in terms
The
of?
minimum threshold requirements. So in terms of experience, financial capacity, et cetera, in order to obtain a license, is there any?
The CRC, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, it sounds like you have some experience in this area. They recently issued regulations which went into extensive detail about what would be required for licensing. And we could certainly, as Michelle said, we could list additional criteria. It's not something we've touched on much except for the social justice aspect. But we'd have to look at the state requirements, which I mean, I looked at them and I thought, I can't imagine anybody's ever going to meet these requirements. And obviously I'm wrong, but it very stringent. So we'd have to consult with our attorneys about whether they felt that we would need additional criteria. And then, as Michelle indicated, those additional criteria might only be able to come into play if we have more applications than we have licenses available. So maybe, I don't know if anyone else wants to tackle this one as well. I hope that answered. I mean, I think, Roger, some of the things you brought up, we haven't really started focusing on yet, and some of it will be relying on the state for.
Okay. No, in terms of the approval, and then just in terms of local hiring and local participation, you mentioned that would be part of if there were additional if there were multiple applicants.
That is something we talked about just a tiny bit, and we would definitely like to see, but that would be something that could only come into effect if we were able to, have a list of criteria to distinguish between, a larger number of applicants than we have licenses.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Kenneth.
Hey, Kenneth, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Can you tell us your name and where you live?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yeah. My name is Kenneth. I live in Riverside area, Riverside Elementary School, and I've been living in Princeton for about 10 years. We're moving from Virginia. and have a young kid at home. First of all, thank you very much for opening up this opportunity for us to providing feedbacks. And I have three items I'd like to discuss about. And the first is, I'm still very confused about the value proposition. So first I thought it was driven by 2% revenue incentive, but apparently it's not. And second, it was somehow has to do with economic disadvantages communities. And I'm very confused about that. So do you imply that economic disadvantages communities actually use marijuana more? And so that you want to do this program to benefit them? So if that is the case, then you really should just put this place into economic disadvantages area. Forget about the other criteria, such as schools, right? Because in that way, you fulfill your mission, fulfill your goal, right? And the third thing is, I'm not sure about each council members. I'm a little concerned about this process. So if each council member is pro already, right, dispensaries in Princeton, then I would be very worried. Because how do I know that the opinion that I presented here is going to be accounted for when you're making the decision? So I'd like to understand how these council members are selected, right? It's a democratic society, so I need to know how this is formed. So, we are taxpayers. I tell you, I own a tech company. I pay a lot of tax, and this thing really worries me. And I normally don't participate in this kind of programs, but this worries me. So I need to know how exactly this process really come about. And you said that you've already had 6 months in the play, and I don't know how much tax money is going into this. Worries me, right? And then you're talking about the legality of this. What is illegal doesn't mean you should make it popular, right? Alcohol is legal, but is alcohol good, right? E-cigarette was legal, but now it's illegal. It bankrupted a few firms, right? So this controlled substance is still a very controversial topic. Why pushing it? So I need to understand all this. I hope that you can elaborate.
Thank you for your comments, Kenneth. And as you describe yourself as someone who doesn't participate in this, I'm really glad you came tonight and you are participating. We did have a previous public meeting in June. This time we really tried to get the word out. I spent several hours talking with some of our local journalists over the last few days to make sure that we got some attention to this, because it can be, we often, and as members of council, we often experience that issues we've been working on for quite some time and trying to get the word out about don't always get through to the public and don't always get their attention. So we really tried on this, and the fact that you're here, I think, is a testament to to the fact that we're committed to hearing public comment. Let me try, and there may be other people who want to address some of the issues. So I'll speak real briefly to your third question, which is how council members are selected. So, obviously, well, I hope council members are elected by Princeton residents. Within the council itself, it's a very democratic, small d democratic way of doing things. For example, if somebody had a particular interest in working on a particular topic, they might decide to start a group. For example, we recently started a task force that's going to investigate the feasibility of having a community center of some kind. That's because there is interest among some members of the public and some members of the council. This basically started because New Jersey legalized cannabis. And back in January, several of us said, this is coming. We have to be prepared. We have to take action, because if we don't take action, then according to the way the law was written, any type of cannabis business and any number could open in the community without any restriction. So we felt that that was not necessarily a good idea. So Leticia, Michelle, and I were the 3 council members who were I did not start January thinking this was what I was going to be doing with my time, but it had to be done. Somebody had to lead this process, and the 3 of us, with our colleagues' agreement, stepped forward. So that's how that was done. In terms of spending taxpayer money, really the only money we've spent, I think, so far is we have a staff member here tonight to regulate our call, Adam. And the last time we did this without a staff member, we had a lot of pornographic and other images thrown up. So I do feel that's money well spent to allow for a public discussion. And Adam will also be at our second public meeting, and should we have subsequent public meetings, we will do so. Otherwise, I don't think we have had some members of our staff, for example, our municipal planner, our zoning officer, our administrator, come to meetings. We've obviously had pretty extensive conversations with our attorney who drafted the opt-out ordinance that we passed in August and has been consulting with us about what we are allowed to do. So as far as to the best of my knowledge, that is the total of municipal resources that have been spent, basically some staff time. Everything else, that the task force are entirely volunteers, both representing the community at large and specific institutions in the community. So I think that answers a couple of that questions, and maybe a member of the task force wants to take on what I alluded to before, that this task force is really not driven by the 2% revenue. Would anyone like to take that on, maybe in a more articulate fashion? Please, Dean, go ahead.
Let me just lower my hand there. So I'd like to respond to a number of the comments this evening. And I think that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding across the board with regard to this issue. Cannabis is now legal in New Jersey. And in that, this municipality does not have the ability to restrict the use of cannabis by its residents. And so any resident, once all of the regulations are put in order, any resident at any time can have cannabis delivered by any licensed facility within the state of New Jersey. They can have it delivered to their home. It doesn't matter if they're next door to a school or a playground or a bus stop. They can have that delivered to their home. They can purchase that. And we also need to understand that those delivery vehicles, the municipality will not be able to restrict how those vehicles are advertised, their advertisement on them, so long as they are within the state's regulations. And so I think that it's important that residents understand that the process is being driven by a very deliberative process by folks that are looking for the best interests of the residents within the municipality, and also some local control on the sale and distribution of cannabis within the municipality. And I think that all of the members of this panel or this task force have been very aware of some of the community's concerns and have taken every one of those inputs to heart. Eve has done an incredible job of sending around any comments from the community to all of us. And so what we've tried to do, I think, is to look at what we allow with regards to liquor, which would be the closest comparison, and then extend that to cannabis and the dispensaries. And certainly while there is the 2% revenue, I don't think that it's been the driving force here at all. I think that the driving force has been to look at what is, if there's going to be cannabis sold within the community, and no matter whether we like it or not, that is going to happen because of the delivery potential. How we can look at that more local control and hopefully have a little bit more of a local economy with regards to it, and have businesses that hopefully are locally owned and controlled. And so I think that that's really the important and the driving force behind a lot of the discussions that have occurred over the last 6 months. And the last thing I want to address with regards to that is, because I'm involved in not only this, but other municipal discussions, is that our work in this task force has been widely publicized, almost from the inception of the task force, in local media, in the town topics, in Planet Princeton, in Patch, in Princeton Perspectives. It has been widely disseminated to the community, and the community has been welcome in all parts of the process. And I welcome all the comments tonight, and certainly am open to it, and will be part of my future thoughts and comments regarding these issues, for sure. Thanks for indulging me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Eva and Dean, for addressing that. Again, lots of questions answered, but there's still questions remaining. That is a value proposition. So why pushing this? I still not very clear exactly who's benefiting it, right? Who's benefiting from this by having this dispensary? And we heard a lot of concerns. And the second, if I do have, not just me, I mean, just from this meeting, we've already heard a lot of concerning opinions. How are those opinions get accounted for in the decision process? I would like more transparency. So if I would know your agenda in the future meetings, I'd like to attend. So I'd like to involve in a step by step. I want to know how I can involve step by step.
All of our meetings are listed on the Cannabis Task Force page of the municipal website. Adam, oh no, they can't see the chat. If you send me an email, you see my name up here. It's first initial and last name at princetonnj.gov. I can send you a link to that webpage, or you can just go on the municipal website. There's a list of all our committees and task force, and you can find it there. All our meetings are open to the public and have been since we started. And members of the public are allowed to come, and there's time for for public comment at every meeting. Again, I think Dean did a really excellent job. Oh, Leticia, why don't you go ahead and.
No, I just wanted to add to what you said, Eve, that I really do encourage you, if you're interested, to attend other of the public meetings that the Cannabis Task Force holds, because then you might have the opportunity to hear what we've heard, some compelling reasons for those who are in favor and why. So yeah, I encourage you to if you're interested to attend the other public meetings, including, and they are noticed on the municipal website. And I would even encourage you, if you're not already signed up for the municipal newsletter, to be informed as to the work of council and other things that we're working on. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Dean, thank you, Leticia. I think Dean gave a really compelling, Dean, thank you so much, reason for why we're doing this. Legal cannabis is coming. It's going to be delivered here. We get no benefit and have no control over that. If we allow dispensaries in Princeton, we have control about the nature of the operation that comes in here. We have some control about where and how they operate. We can hopefully select someone who will be a good neighbor, a good citizen, a good, business citizen of the community, and will work with us and be a partner with us on initiatives, education, and all that stuff. So, the other compelling reason that have been articulated by members of the task force and other people is that, I understand that, for example, you might see alcohol as something that isn't good, but many people use it and enjoy it responsibly. We had a very bad experience in this country with trying to outlaw alcohol. Many would argue that the war on drugs has been really detrimental to many people in this country, especially communities of color, but not only communities of color. And this is a way for Princeton to say, we don't agree with that war on drugs. We want a more equitable, if somebody has a drug problem, they should be treated as a patient and not put in prison as a criminal. So I think all of this, the destigmatization, the bringing it, cannabis sort of out of the shadows, is an attempt to bring to life the values that members of the task force and other members of the community have expressed to us. And that doesn't mean that we are not listening to the comments that have been brought up tonight, or that we won't be listening to the comments at our subsequent public meeting and beyond then. And you can always reach the council members, and as Dean also said, when we get comments about this, we share it with members of the task force. Anyone else want to respond to Kenneth? Or okay, Colleen, please. You're muted up.
Okay, so I think Eve, you just addressed some of the questions I was going to respond to, but you had suggested that members of the task force have been sort of slated to be pro having cannabis in town. And I would like to say that I was selected to be on the task force as just a community representative. I mean, I've raised 4 children in Princeton. I have been long aware of problems with drug and alcohol use and the issues that we've had. And I mean, my application was completely blind as to if I had any kind of bias or something. And I know all the members of this task force are people that have high standards, and they all have different perspectives that they bring to this, but we do not have an agenda that we're trying to promote. And I think that's important, that we bring a lot of voices to this and a lot of perspectives, and that what we're doing is fair and equitable, and we're trying to address what the state has mandated and try to execute in a way that makes sense for our town, whether it's to opt out or opt in. But I mean, we don't have an agenda for sure to be trying to promote the dispensary in our town.
Thank you. That's reassuring.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for addressing. I'm sorry, none of the others addressed that, but thank you very much, Colleen, for addressing that. All right, I think, Adam, do we have more comments?
Yes, we have Christine Grant coming back.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Christine, can you tell us where you live?
I live in the western section of town for almost 40 years. I happen to have sent a long letter to you, Eve, and would hope that that was circulated. I come as a citizen of 40 years here, a parent, raised children here, and was a former commissioner of health and senior services for the state. In that capacity, I've had quite a few decades involved in various behavioral health issues and access to various substances. I certainly recognize Council President Fraga's energy, passion, and effectiveness in raising issues of underprivileged minority residents. I guess I can't help but say, unless people are not here tonight, that where are our residents who stand to benefit from this in your view? Also, my concern is this is a very inelegant way to communicate. And I am concerned, since Michelle mentioned that it's important that the disabled, the elderly, et cetera, have access. If they can't get on the phone, they can't get on this Zoom. So I am concerned about the upcoming meetings. Having said that, I have just three questions. You don't have to answer that, but just take it for what it's worth. Being on this kind of this Zoom, it's tough. It's very tough to know what's going on here. The three questions, the first comment is I couldn't agree more, having spent at least 2 decades in anti-tobacco for youth issues, and also a special interest in maternal and child health issues of access of pregnant women using cannabis and other Schedule I drugs. So I bring that particular interest. So given that, I feel that the Princeton, I think we're way too premature to focus on what particular areas, but the Princeton Shopping Center is a mecca for young families, for kids, for middle school kids who, if I'm sure all of you on the phone are aware, congregate there late morning, lunch, after school. Little League families are there. It's just a mecca for kids, and I can't think of another place that would be poorer than the Princeton Shopping Center for that reason. Second, a technical question is that you talked about ownership having one local resident. I think we all have to be smart about this. It is somewhat, it could be viewed as naive to think that an applicant who has one shareholder, I believe you said, as a local resident, may not in fact be a distant, large company and well out of our reach for any meaningful controls once the application is granted. So I think a lot more work has to be done to pin that down, not necessarily changing if you have to be stuck with that criteria, but you have to have a way to be realistically expect to control. It took me 2 minutes to think. I'll open a store, I'll have a fleet of trucks. The product on that truck doesn't have to come from here. You've already said that. It'll look local, but it won't be local. And we could be, and what we're also naive to think that our residents are not already, if they want access, like Mr. Smith said, they're already going online. So it's not intuitively obvious that we won't be just giving cover to a new place that is a retail place. The second question, so the first is technically just an acknowledgement and a hope that you will think really hard and not be naive. Forgive me, but I've been naive in the past as it related to tobacco. Not be naive as to how companies will operate to be use this as a hub. Not to mention we have a very large college population and graduate population. Second, I feel that we do not have pinned down, and the state commission hasn't pinned down at all, an educational program. And we went through that with tobacco. We made it illegal. We had the 1,000-foot setbacks. And with all due respect, without enforcement, That enforcement relates to education. What are we going to do with enforcement? It took years to make sure that the local, often small, and not all over the state, were not continuing to smoke, to sell to kids. And just visualize you're downtown, you're on Nassau Street, Friday, Saturday night, lots of kids are gathering. And we know that you just need to ask somebody to go into a store. And it's actually tougher to bring out bottles than it would be to bring cannabis. So I am concerned that by having a hub, a retail hub, close to where kids gather, is just asking for the issues. And that we can't expect, without us insisting with the state commission that they need to put money in education. And it's not there now. Don't believe it is. In Colorado and California, the public health people there had to work very, very hard to make sure there would be educational materials for the general public. So that is not pinned down. And I think that the final issue I would say is that when we have this next meeting, if I'm correct that that's still virtual, I just got to say that, okay, if that's going to be in person, with all due respect, the various populations we're talking about, I'm not sure, despite the fact that you have articles in computer-based publications, that we'll see who shows up. But I am surprised that we're not seeing actual members of the community whom we want to help with the social justice issues, with the access issues, and would encourage you to do that. So the two questions, and then I'll stop. Two questions again is, do we really understand when we think we're going to open a dispensary that we're not opening it to a large national company that will have a token person on the spot? And secondly, do we really understand that we'll have a gray market, we'll have people coming into town, and it will be undercover? So where is undercover of having this retail establishment? Where is the enforcement going to be by Princeton to make sure that we set a standard that we want to operate in a way that is discreet, that doesn't invite kids in? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. I can speak to a couple of that. So our next meeting, weather permitting, is intended to be in person. You know, some people prefer Zoom, some people prefer in Princeton. They both, the in person in Princeton, they both have their, you know, their drawbacks and advantages. You know, as I said before, Christine, I don't know what you were here at the beginning. I would say, I don't know if I speak for Michelle and Leticia, my biggest frustration in the almost 3 years that I've been on council is getting information out to the public. It's very, very hard. You know, as I say, I spent several hours over the weekend talking to, we don't have a robust, you know, we have really, the packet is a shadow of its former self. We have Town Topics, and we have online journalism. In the past, the municipality has mailed information to people, and many people just toss out most of their mail. So, you know, if anyone has suggestions for how to get the attention of the public, I would be really happy to hear them, because it is really my biggest frustration. And we have really tried to do that. There is also going to be another public meeting at the Arts Council on the 25th of September, just confirmed that today. And that is hosted by the Witherspoon Jackson Neighborhood Association. It's open to the public, but you know, intended to address some needs of the community there, both about the Witherspoon Street redesign and the Cannabis Task Force. We've had our last public meeting, you know, I would say had a slightly different flavor to it. We had more speakers who were adamantly in favor of us doing that. So this meeting, is obviously a little bit different. In terms of ownership, okay, so I may have misspoken. So if we decide to allow retail or any of the cannabis licenses, and we opt for a micro license, there is a requirement for a micro license that the person, the owner, and I think it's 51%, lives in either this community or an adjacent community. And there are a lot of other restrictions about a micro license. I'm under no illusion that for our regular license, we're going to get probably should we allow that? We would get someone that's a big player on the national scale. It's very, very expensive to open a cannabis anything. And, so that company would have to be very well vested. But there are companies from, the information we've received that are more receptive to community input, that have a better track record of being good neighbors to communities and of working with them to achieve community goals together. So we would definitely draw on, to the extent that we could, on research about those companies. I just want to say that your cigarette smoking has been a big issue here. And I think it was last year, maybe Leticia can speak to this, or maybe it was 2 years ago, since she's the liaison to the Board of Health. We changed the regulations about cigarette smoking. It had been that if cigarettes were sold to an underage person, that the person who bore the brunt of the punishment was the person who sold the cigarettes. And we do actually, the health department sends people out into the community to, I think there are 4 outlets that sell cigarettes in town, and sends people to try to purchase and to see if the age guidelines are being respected. And so the penalty used to fall on the person who worked at the shop, and we changed that so that now the shop owner is responsible. So if you have, a 19-year-old who sells cigarettes to someone else, they are responsible, but the owner is also responsible. And according to the information I've received, that has really put the fear of God into them, so to speak. And that we continue to send people out into the community to try to purchase cigarettes, to make sure that they're enforcing the age restriction. And that since that new regulation was passed, that there has not been any fines issued. And certainly I would expect our health department would do the same thing with cannabis, but there are many, many, many more restrictions. The licensing is very strict, and the requirements issued by the state are very strict. And what I've gathered from reading about other states, and there may be people on this call who are much more knowledgeable than I am, is that underage access tends to diminish with legal cannabis. It's not that the black market goes away, but there are easier ways for people to underage people to get the product if they want to, other than going through the legal marketplace. And Colleen, I see you have your hand up.
I do. I wanted to address your question about education for cannabis use in our town. And from the very beginning, one of the missions of our task force was how we could address education of users in our town. And, perhaps we cannot, control the whole state, but we can educate our community. And so I had volunteered to serve on the education committee because I see that it's such a critical part of how we introduce cannabis into our town responsibly. And so there are several aspects of that. I mean, there's the medical cannabis users, at which I am one. I mean, I have benefited from medical cannabis for many years, and not always legally, but so I think we need education for folks that could benefit from medical cannabis. We have our seniors, and we're all talking about our children who need to learn about responsible use of cannabis, but also our seniors in this community that are beginning to use recreational marijuana as for medical or recreational use. So I mean, I think that we are primed and ready to educate our town in all its aspects of how to use, marijuana responsibly. And that's interfacing with other, other groups in the town, the schools, the police force, and I mean, I don't know, a lot of other people. So, but we are definitely, that's part of our mission, is to educate our town on responsible use of cannabis.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else on the panel want to respond? Okay. Given the time, I think we're going to continue with the people have their hands up, but I think given that it's approaching 9 o'clock, if people who've already spoken would like to convey additional sentiments, please, reach out to any of the council members here. We will share your comments with the rest of the task force. And again, all of us are first initial of our first name, all of our last name at princetonnj.gov. And Adam, can you bring on the next member of the public?
Sure, bringing in Gerald Kaplan.
Thank you. Gerald, you can unmute yourself, and if you don't mind telling us which part of town you hail from or your street, that would be great.
Very good. Yeah, I'm on Clover Lane near Littlebrook School.
Thank you.
I missed the first couple of minutes, so please accept my apologies if it's something you already covered. But I want to first of all congratulate all of you on your extreme patience listening to people of all opinions. I'll try to be brief, unlike some of the other callers. I'll try not to be sarcastic, although it's too late for that. Anyway, I thought that Dean really summarized things very well, saying, hey, this is coming. It's coming to town. So some of the other callers saying, well, why are you even looking at this? Well, it's coming. And the reason you're doing this is actually for our benefit,
right?
For our convenience. People in the state of New Jersey, eventually, when all the laws are pinned down or regulations, are going to be able to get this cannabis anyway. So let's do it in a way that is convenient for us without harming other people. Obviously, you don't want to set up something in the cafeteria of the Littlebrook School, to dispense cannabis. But I think the shopping center is an excellent choice. And I didn't hear anything about whether we should separate medical marijuana from recreational use. I'm assuming it would seem to me that it would make sense to combine them just so that you would have fewer dispensaries in town to serve the public. So really, again, I want to thank all of you for what you're doing, and good luck. And I know a lot of the callers are trying to re-legislate this. It's too late for that. And not that that's unfortunate. I am in favor. I'm one of the 78% in favor of having this in the state and in the town. So again, thanks very much. And with that, I will stop.
Thanks for your comment. And Michelle, do you just want to take on that one comment about the medical versus recreational? Because you did touch on that in your presentation.
I did. And I mean, I think that, from what I understand, it may make it more feasible to have both available within the same dispensary. Legally, we can do that. I understand. And, from a financial and feasibility standpoint, it probably makes the most sense. But that was something that the task force had not, we just wanted to open it up. So I appreciate the comments that it would make sense. It's more convenient that way as well. And it may make more sense from a financial economic standpoint for the dispensary owner standpoint. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for your comments, Gerald. Adam, can you bring on the next person, please?
Yes, speaking next is Ying.
Ying, thanks. You can unmute and tell us where you live, please.
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yeah, all right, thank you. I'm Ying, I live in the Littlebrook area, and my kids is attending Princeton Public School. And I thank you very much. I've been listening, and to be honest, I didn't know about this meeting, and I joined about like at 7:30, so I missed the presentation. And also I had prior arrangements, but I tried to listen. I felt like I learned a lot throughout this conversation, and I thank you for your very patient explanations about the intricacies. So personally, I voted yes on to legalizing marijuana for New Jersey at state law. But on the other hand, as a parent of my daughter's preteen, right, and I know she hangs out with her friends. You guys mentioned about Princeton Shopping Center and etc. So I understand there are a lot of, it's a highly technical and complicated issue. And also it's could be controversial in town. So my comments here is I feel, and I also in particular appreciate some of the participants' comments that they seem to be really knowledgeable, understanding the issues. So here's my suggestion or comment to you with respect to this, right? As the town resident. First of all, you mentioned about getting this to be heard by people, and it's hard to reach out to the community. So I want to mention one thing is, because I'm involved with PTO and also I advocate for an AAPI group in town. So currently this year in Princeton Public School, we have white students no longer the super majority. So we have, they're under 50%. So we have minority students are more than 50%, including mixed race, and Asian American students are about 25%. So I feel like just a suggestion to the town council that you should understand the demographics in town and the changing demographics. In particular, right, the constitution of the people who may find this issue controversial. And also with respect as an Asian American, I feel like we have been, let me put a word, passively excluded, right, of the civic engagement process. I see this also as a great opportunity, as a learning opportunity for all to understand about, when a new idea comes or a potentially controversial idea, how do we as a group, a very diverse community, Princeton, how do we look at this and solve it together? Right, so it's an opportunity learning. I hear you guys talk about education about issues of marijuana, but I also see this as a great opportunity of civic engagement, civic participation, a learning for all, because it is an issue I think everybody cares, right? You may have some other things related to zoning, focus on the business opportunity, not everyone find it immediately related to their lives. So on that note, I would urge you guys maybe even do even more outreaching to the groups of communities that in your all of these meetings, right, when you don't see representations, do active inclusion, right, and to avoid passive exclusion of opinions. And yeah, so that's my suggestion. I think, and I also like to, I don't know if you guys are going to publish the recordings of this meeting or do a memo or a Q&A, right? I like to learn more about it. And also, with Princeton PTO, we would send out our notice multilingual. So if you guys can, even just an effort, right, to reach out people, you have this thing in Spanish or Chinese or, other language, people might find it more easier. So at least they feel like they're being included in the town council seeing them, right? Just on people who I can see on the screen, I don't see the faces are truly representing our community when I go to Princeton Shopping Center. So, but anyway, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate all your inputs and your work. And I also hear the decisions behind those decisions. You guys really care about this community. So thank you.
Thank you so much for these comments. And I would say that the people who are here tonight from the task force, the task force has 23 members. So there are people, I think if you saw the entirety of the task force, you might feel that it was more representative of the community. But we are always looking to include members of communities. And I hate for you to feel that by speaking up here, that you would get recruited into something, but I would love to recruit you to be involved. We have many different task forces, commissions, boards, and we are always looking for people to speak up, both as individuals and to help provide us access into communities that are less represented. For another initiative that I'm working on, which is on sustainable landscaping, where many of the people, the landscaping companies are owned by people who speak Spanish. Many of the workers are Spanish. All of that material and all of those meetings do have translators. All the materials been in Spanish and English. So we are, aware of the fact that that this is a diverse community, and that's definitely something we're working on. I'd love to, sit down and talk with you about these issues. So please reach out to me. It's, we're a work in progress. I think we're better than we were, but we still have a ways to go. So yeah, thank you, really. And anyone else also who's spoken up tonight. There's always opportunities to be, I hate to return this into a recruiting call, but there's always opportunities to be involved. So yeah, so Leticia and then Michelle.
Yes, I just wanted to take the opportunity for those who are have not had the opportunity to speak or have questions later on. I wanted to point out that the municipal's webpage, that is specifically the Cannabis Task Force webpage, will have a link to not just this recording, but also other recordings that are being made available from past meetings. Also, any information that that may be available regarding the work of the task force. And also on that Cannabis Task Force webpage, there is a link to contact us. Will be the 3 council members that are liaisons to the task force. So no need to try to remember our names and our email address. If you just click on the link to contact us, all 3 of us will receive your message, and we will certainly relay it to the rest of the task force.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all. I just a quick PSA, since we have so many new people that are engaging with us and we want to reach the community more. If you're not getting our bi-week or twice a week newsletter, please sign up for it, because there's a lot of good information in there so we can keep in touch with you. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say again, continuing the PSA theme, and then I'll stop. We have important affordable housing issues that are coming before a council that affect, planning and zoning. We have other types of development issues. There's the sustainable landscaping initiative that will affect, when you can use a gas leaf blower and other kinds of things. So the work of council and of our boards, committees, and commissions, and many of the people here tonight are members of some of those boards and commissions, or some of them are. Those organizations really help us do our work. And if, for example, we've had residents reach out to us who are concerned about the spotted lanternfly, which is a new pest in our area. We have a shade tree commission where people can go and talk about that issue. So there are lots of ways of getting involved. And okay, I'm really gonna stop here. Sorry, Adam, bring on the next person.
Okay, bringing in CG.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. My name is Catherine, and I live close to Princeton High School. And first of all, I want to thank all of you for your dedication to the community service. This is actually my first time participating in this kind of meeting. And thank you, Eve, for reaching out to the journalists, because actually I got this information from Planet Princeton. So while we were having this meeting, I logged on to the City Council website and tried to search for information for this agenda. And so I tried to view all the agenda and the minutes, and I don't find anything regarding this cannabis issue topic. And the meeting minutes was only up to year 2020. And I go to council notice, view meeting documents, and I don't see anything. So I try to search by Cannabis Task Force, which is a magic word I just heard today. And finally, I got the link to the video, but of course, I don't have time to look at those videos while listening into this meeting at the same time. So I tried to say when I see sign up for mayor and the council's newsletter, so I actually have to go in there and sign up for the newsletter. So I have a very small suggestion about the website here. If for any upcoming agenda and the big events, can you just place a big header on your website, so people at least know what's coming next? Because it's very difficult for people to navigate all these links and try to find out what's the information that's going to matter to them, that's relevant to them, right? And I hope it's not too much work. And if you need help, I can volunteer. So get me in touch with the person who's in charge of this website. Yeah, so I can volunteer for that. And regarding the topic itself, I have to admit that I don't have much research on that, and I understand opinions from both sides. And from my own perspective, I'm just concerned about for my kids, because kids, when they are at a younger age, they are easier to be influenced, particularly if they go to, like, if I imagine like the distance between the Princeton shopping center to the school is actually quite close. And my kids go to the shopping center for fundraising for their pediatrician all the times. So I wouldn't say that, I understand some people need marijuana, and we shouldn't discriminate those people based on their usage of marijuana. But we also have to understand that marijuana is a gateway drug to all these heroines, all these other kind of drugs that I have never heard about. So, but I'm not an expert on that, so I'm not gonna say anything further. But I want to. I just Googled on Google, and I searched for New Jersey townships banning marijuana. And the article I got is a August 9th, 2021 published data. It says half of New Jersey towns poised to ban cannabis business. So my question is, because based on what I heard from the panel, it sounds like this is a sure thing. We can never stop it. It's coming, we have to accept it. But for the people who are against it, do they have a voice? Can their voice be heard? How is it gonna be decided? That's my question. Because like for me, like if I want to, I don't know like where's the stats about 78 people approving it. I don't know where that stat come from, because obviously in my social circle and of all the people that I have heard in this meeting, they are against it to a certain point. I mean, at least from the proposals, like the 200 feet away from schools, I'm like, this is like no restriction at all. So I hope, we can have this question answered. Are you telling us this is a sure thing, or is there still a process time for the voice of residents to be heard, and for more due diligence to be performed on this issue, and for the residents of Princeton to vote on this? I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me answer a couple of those things. And first of all, there should have been something, last week I checked, there was something on the front page of the website. So I don't know, I'll look into that. I sympathize about the website. It's not as user-friendly as it could be. You hit on the magic way to do things, which is to enter the thing that you want to search for. But basically our council meetings are different than our task force boards and commission meetings. But also for something like a task force, there are no requirements to have recordings or minutes of our meetings. So with the exceptions of meetings when we've had presentations, we have not been recording our meetings, nor do we have minutes. We're not legally required to do that. It would require more resources from the municipality to have somebody there to take the minutes. So that was usually task forces don't do that. So we chose not to do that as well. Let me talk, but thank you for your offer to help with that. In terms of the process, the task force is constituted by council to focus on this issue, on what should Princeton do about the fact that cannabis is going to be legal throughout the state of New Jersey. The 78%, there was a referendum of New Jersey voters in November 2020. And at that time, I think about 70% of people throughout the state voted in favor of legalization of cannabis. And 78% of voters in Princeton who voted in favor of legalization of cannabis. There is no practical or cost-effective way to ask residents of the community to vote on this. There are many important decisions that council takes. The only time we've had a referendum in Princeton, and I think we had 4, possibly 5 of them, was on whether or not Princeton Borough and Princeton Township should merge. Otherwise, we are your legal representative, Michelle, Leticia, and I, and there are 3 more of us and a mayor who votes in case of ties. And so the process as set out by law and by our ordinances, this task force, after having heard from the public, will make recommendations that will go to the council, and the council has already had several meetings on this. The council will consider those recommendations. And if an ordinance is drafted, an ordinance is presented to the council to be placed on the agenda. And then at a second meeting, there's a public hearing when members of the community can come and speak. So there is a lengthy process. This is one way in which we're gathering input. People can reach out to us. Leticia had a much quicker way of doing it, which is through the Cannabis Task Force. There is a link. If you click on that and send us an email, all 3 of the council members will get that. So you're welcome to do that. I think I addressed the questions about process. Michelle, Leticia, did I miss anything, or do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say too that, I'm taking notes, we're all taking notes of the feedback. I mean, the next step in our process, we have 2 more community meetings that are scheduled, and we have further task force meetings. We'll take these suggestions and comments and take them back to the task force and discuss them. So, I mean, nothing that we presented tonight is written in stone at all. Not only that, but once the task force has time to meet and digest the feedback, then, we would then be bringing it before council, and it's a vote of the 4 out of 6 votes, right, in case of a tie. So I think Dean has his hand up.
Yes, please go ahead, Dean.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. I first wanted to say I really appreciate all of the inputs that have come from the public this evening, and as a member of the task force, it provides with a lot of things to think about, and one of the things that we've had to think about with regards to if dispensaries are going to be allowed in town, how to restrict where those are at, or allow where those are at. And one of the overarching concerns this evening has been with regards to school zones. And I've heard some members of the public talk about the federal drug-free school zones and the 1,000-foot marker or demarcation, and discussions of Colorado. And Colorado, I think that's a little bit fuzzy because local municipalities are given permission to deviate from that 1,000-feet marker demarcation. There's still considerations as to whether or not federal law applies and so forth. But I need to hone down on New Jersey law. So in terms of the way that the regulations have been written in New Jersey, marijuana has been removed from that dangerous controlled substance list. And so we, as a task force, have to come to a place of how do we regulate this? What is a way of regulating this where we're looking at something comparable? And the thing that we came to that seemed the most comparable was the sale of alcohol in our community. And so while I understand folks' apprehensions about marijuana and its proximity to kids, what I have as a task force member to look at is a similar substance and how it's regulated. And so what I would ask as a task force member in terms of if folks want to come to a meeting and give their input, for me to kind of weigh how to look at this is I need to understand kind of the delineation between marijuana and alcohol with regards to current New Jersey law, the laws that we're looking at right now in terms of the way that we're looking at these substances. Because that really seems like, at least from my perspective, what I'm kind of left with in terms of making these decisions. And if I'm wrongheaded on that, I would love for community members kind of to put on the table and bring to the discussion the delineation as to how we look differently at alcohol and its sale and distribution within our community, and the possibility of marijuana being sold within our community. And so that's going to be helpful to me as a task force member in terms of moving forward with this conversation. And that's, in some ways, I haven't heard that tonight, and that would be really helpful going forward from some community members, because I am concerned as well about the youth in our community. I mean, it's at the center of what I do here. And so I'm fully open to that conversation and certainly would like to hear from members of the community about that particular perspective. Thanks.
Dean, do you want to just identify what it is that you do?
Yeah, me and my partner Joanne own Shazam's Toys and Books in town, and so the health and well-being of kids in our community is paramount to what we do in our life, and so I want to make sure that the way that we're looking at this is right-headed, and we're doing this in a way that doesn't harm folks in our community. And I'd just like to say, I just drove across the country from California to New Jersey and looked at and tried to take in how different municipalities were dealing with dispensaries through the country. Even Utah is way ahead of us on this issue, Utah. And so I think that there's ways of dealing with dispensaries that can be beneficial to our community, where we have some local control. And as the last thing I want to say with regards to this, I just wanted to address Ms. Grant from earlier. Local control and ownership is of paramount importance to me. And so I have just as many concerns about small, I guess, shareholders in these businesses. And that's, so I would like to hear from community members about that in terms of making these establishments most equitable. So we have as much local control as possible, because if there is local control, there's local accountability, right? And so if somebody is harming our kids, it's not some delivery driver coming in from some municipality that doesn't have a connection to this community and these folks. It's somebody who is owning a business in this town and has community to the families, the PTOs, and the residents in the municipality of Princeton. That's what, if we're going to have cannabis being sold, that's what I want to see. I want to see accountability. And local control is the way that you get that more than anything else. So thanks for indulging me again. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. Leticia, please.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Dean said. I mean, totally 100% agree. And I want to add, I too live near the high school. I too have teenagers that were dealing through the teenage years and access to alcohol, access to other substances. I've also I have adult children who have survived the teenage years, and so my interest is really in how we're going to regulate, how we're going to enforce, how we're going to educate, and which I think is really very important, as to how we educate our children, and also ensure that just like alcohol sales, I know it was pointed out earlier, somebody mentioned that they had looked at some data about what New Jersey towns have already decided to opt out. I want to point out that that may be the towns who are like us are waiting, being deliberate in how we're going to opt in, what our regulations are going to look like, because there was a timeline of for us to decide to opt in, and if we opt out, and if we didn't, then we automatically are in. So I wouldn't take too much stock as to who has opted out already, but also just like we do have towns in New Jersey, at least one that I know of, that is considered a dry town where alcohol sales are not allowed. And I don't, it's a legal substance, but yes, it's not allowed. And I think it's more about what the community, listening to our community, and really we are listening to your concerns, but also listening to the compelling stories, like I said earlier, of those who want access to it. So, and can I make another point? I don't know how much more time we have, but I noticed that the next person who has their hand raised is someone who already spoke, and we do want to give opportunities to those who haven't yet spoken. Meredith Avalos, if you're still here, who's the chair of our Board of Health, you had your hand raised earlier, and if you're still here and wish to speak, I would encourage you to raise your hand again to give you that opportunity. And there we go. Adam?
Okay.
Thank you, Leticia. This is Meredith Avalos. I think I can ask you, I'll just ask you these questions offline because I don't really want to be speaking on behalf of the Board of Health. But I did have some questions based on on some of the comments made by the task force members. So maybe I'll just ask you, I don't.
And I would also say, if there's anything that not speaking as on behalf of the Board of Health, do feel free to ask any questions you may have.
Sure. So let me do that. I just wanted to clarify one of the points, Eve, and actually, Leticia, you just brought this up as well. Eve, you had brought up the health department's involvement in enforcing underage sales of cigarettes and vape, whatever, e-cigarettes. Is that the anticipated role of the health department in enforcement of sales at any dispensaries in town?
We have not talked about that, but I assumed that they would play the same role as they would, that they do in other health related issues, making sure that the rules are being adhered to. I think the standards for cannabis dispensaries and the penalties for violating those standards are going to be much, much more severe than they are currently for people who are caught selling cigarettes to underage folks. So we'll have to look at exactly what the state laws are, but I do see a role for our health department in this. Of course, we should talk to the health officer about it. But I mean, the issue about this is so much as, is unknown at this point. And that's not something we've talked about. We have not talked officially to the health department. So yeah, I don't know, but I imagine so, but I don't know.
So I'd like to add that we do have a representative from the Board of Health of the task force, Kathy Stillo, who does a really great job of reporting back to the Board of Health the work of the task force.
Thanks. I think this just was probably more recent, right, with the actual regulatory commission coming out with their guidance. And so I don't think we've had a chance to get that information. And since it had been discussed here tonight, I just thought I would clarify, but we'll clarify it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Meredith. Okay, so it's 9:15. I think there's just, for some reason, I am not able to see people's hands raised, but I think there's just one more person who spoke before, or
he's already spoken. There's two people who have spoken before, but it's
okay. So given the time, just one very brief comment from each. Is that acceptable? So Adam, why don't you do that, but please keep it very brief. And again, you can reach out to any of us and we can share your comments with the task force.
Okay, first up here is Wei Wu.
I thought I asked a question before, but if you give me the opportunity, I just have one.
Yes, I'm sorry. Just keep it very brief.
It's going to be extremely short.
Okay,
So I
perfect.
think, no, I think Dean summarized very well the rationales, but you also mentioned the sort of one thing. You said if there is no shop in our town, right, people will buy, and then there will be a shipment from other places. So I'm just wondering if really that's the case. What's the pros and the cons of that, right? So if really people needs, then they can order, they can directly deliver to their homes without all these concerns that other people mentioned, right? So that's my question.
Thank you. I think, Dean, can you mind, because I thought you had a great answer to that about kind of the responsibility of care in terms of delivery versus a local institution. Would you mind just reiterating that?
I'm sure. I think that one of the things with local businesses and local control, at least you hope anyway, is that there is a more direct responsibility to the folks that you share your community with. That is why a lot of folks decide to shop with local businesses. They choose to go to locally owned restaurants, et cetera, because the people that own those businesses are your neighbors and are part of your community, and will often respond positively and in fact be involved more readily in your community, which is why I sit on this task force. I've been involved in other municipal task force and aspects of municipal government, and same with my partner. And almost every one of the other business owners in town. And so it is when you're ordering from another place, what you are likely going to get is going to be one of the larger cannabis conglomerates that is kind of taking over this business from coast to coast. And so one of my roles on this task force is if there's going to be dispensaries in town, I'm hoping that part of my voice here is that there's some local control and ownership. So we do have accountability to this community, and that we are that the people that own these shops are active community members and participating in the betterment of this community.
So does that mean, like, say, if those delivery, shops or businesses, if they are out of Princeton, they still subject to, say, state law, their local, townships, rules, regulations, or even federal regulations?
Delivery will be subject to state law with no restriction. Like it could be 3 in the morning. I don't know. I think it can be any time. I don't know if I don't want to speak. Hugh might know. I don't think there's any restrictions on when delivery can occur, although there might be. Hugh, do you know?
Yeah, there are restrictions on time.
Okay. So yeah, so there are. I take that back. There are restrictions on time, but as I think Dean said, there's your neighbor can order and a van that is. I think it has to be fairly discreet, but a van can deliver to your to your neighbor next door, whether it's obvious what they're carrying. I mean, they have to have a lot of security in these delivery vans. So it's probably like an armored truck pulling up outside your house.
I see. No, thank you. But I think you've compared this to a restaurant as a local business. I think, in my opinion, it's a different comparison. I mean, local restaurant, I go there all the time. I have to sit there, I eat, I enjoy. But just for this, I guess just one point, for the committee, do you guys really consider the pros and the cons of sort of remote delivery? Because, sounds like if this is really serving the purpose for the people in needs, then it seems to me that's more like a customized approach, right? If I want to read recreational or for my medical reasons, I get just for myself and no bother for others, right? So just sort of one thought. I don't know if the committee or the task force is considered that, as one of the potential options. So let me stop here. Again, thank you very much for listening to me and giving me twice the opportunity to ask you questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. I'll just say, from somebody who cares deeply, deeply about this community, this town, and the vibrancy of our business community here, that I would argue that delivery does not, although it may be more convenient, it does not take the place of having, again, as Dean said, having people invested in the community and playing roles here and being a part of the fabric of the life. And that's true for someone who, owns a wine store, or a toy store, or, potentially a cannabis store, that I think we get better outcomes if those people are invested and involved in our community. But I think we had one more person who's going to make a very brief comment, and then we're going to let everyone go home.
Okay, Piper Griffin is coming back.
So Piper, welcome back. Can you keep it brief?
Yes, and I apologize for the length of my statements before. This is my first forum too.
Welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. I had a question for you all that I'm hoping you can answer. Will it be legal, or according to this new law, will it be legal to people? So it will be legal for people to smoke in marijuana out in public like they would a cigarette? Is that? I just want to know.
That's my understanding, is anywhere you can legally smoke a cigarette or use a vape device with tobacco, you will be able to do that with cannabis or marijuana. Again, Hugh, anyone else? Is that accurate?
I think that was maybe something in the medical law. I think there's restrictions on public consumption.
On public consumption anywhere?
Of right. I'm going to have to look that up specifically in the regs, but I believe that there's restrictions on public consumption of cannabis.
Okay, I was just curious. And then is it? I know that you have the limited radius to the schools. Whatever number of feet you decide, is it possible to put playgrounds in there as well, and perhaps extend the foot distance? Is that something that the task force could look at?
Sure, that we've taken, I have that in my notes, add playgrounds park to distance from dispensary and consider expanding the distance. Again, the task force makes recommendations to council. Council makes the decision, but, we're going to talk about all of the comments that have been made at this meeting and at our next couple of meetings in September. So we'll definitely consider all of these comments.
Thank you. And one more question, is the age, I'm sorry, I'm not informed on this issue. I just saw the Town Topics article and then Princeton Patch, and that's how I found out about this. Thank you for reaching out to them. Is the age limit going to be 21 like alcohol, or is it going to be 18 like tobacco?
21. That one I know.
Okay.
21.
Thank you. And I really appreciate all of the information you all provided and the thought you put into this. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Piper, and especially to all the other members of the public who are here for the first time. We're thrilled to have you here and to hear from you. And we hope, this won't be the end of your civic engagement on this or on any other topic. And thank you for sticking with us. I know it's been a long meeting, and thank you to our task force members. Really appreciate you also sticking with it. For those who spoke, thank you. To those who just had a silent presence here, thank you as well. Leticia, Michelle, any final comments? So just remember, our next public meeting is the 18th, is that right? Saturday, the 18th at 10 a.m. Heinz Plaza, weather permitting. Zoom, there's a Zoom link on our website already. Dean, only the panelists can see the comments. So if you want to say something, you want to make that comment out loud, you can do that. And then on the 25th, 10 a.m. at the Arts Council, hosted by the Witherspoon Jackson Neighborhood Association, also, both in person, one outside, one inside masks required. And Dean, did you want to just make that comment out loud?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody that participated in this, because it is really important to hear everybody's voice with regards to this. And it really does get us thinking and talking about the concerns and inputs of the community. And so I'm very happy to have been able to participate in this conversation. And I just want everybody out there to know, from my perspective, all these inputs are taken to heart, and are given their due consideration. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, before we say goodnight, Adam says there's one more person who I think hasn't spoken yet. Is that right?
Yes, we have Kathleen.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Kathleen, we can. Can you tell us where you live?
Oh, yeah, I live in the Riverside area. Thank you all for tonight and spend all this time. And I just have one quick question, that it sounds to me that this meeting is like the dispenser in Princeton is inevitable to me. Whether or not that we are opposed, which I oppose it, we're going to have one here. So my question it is that, if in that case, like I'm thinking about, I'm just giving an example, like, all these fast food places like McDonald's, Wendy's, and Five Guys, all they are legal, they're all around the United States. But I did not see anything in Princeton, the town. And some people told me that because the Princeton people doesn't like the fast food. So I'm saying that even though it's legal everywhere, but if we don't like it, we oppose it, then they should not come in. Is that correct?
So there used to be, when I moved here in 1985, one of the first issues that I became aware of as a new resident was a debate about a Burger King that wanted to open on Nassau Street. And the conversation was not about Burger King opening, but whether they could, in a historic district, display their characteristic sign, which in fact they were not able to do. But they did exist for many, many years. I mean, Michelle, I don't know, or someone else might remember when they closed. I'd say it was in the last 5 to 7 years. I assume that the economics for a fast food restaurant are just not favorable in Princeton, but we certainly, if one wanted to come in, there might be some restrictions on signage, but otherwise we would certainly not.
Yeah, I think it would come under the historic district guidelines, just like any signage would. And it's pretty restrictive in terms of not
in the downtown. But yeah, I mean, if a Burger King wanted to open on 206 or, Alex, if this, I think it's just not financially.
I think for something like that usually has a drive-through or quick in and out access, it's not really a feasible type of business.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. I'm just saying that as your task force, you ought to consider that there's considerable people in this town is opposed the cannabis shop in the town. So if there is the case, I think the task force should really consider that. And even though we cannot prevent that, but it should be minimized, the impact in the township. in our youth, in our children in this area. And yeah, we can do something definitely. It doesn't mean that it's legal. We cannot do anything, but we can set up the criteria, and we can set up the restriction, what this business can do. That's what I want to see, whether we have this kind of discussion. I don't want the task force on one direction is inevitable. And first of all, second of all, it's how much we can do. And it sounds to me that, I mean, from the beginning and the opening is like inevitable, it's legal. And if we don't do it, we don't have a task force and they will come in anyway, they will take over the town. So I don't, I have this kind of first impression. And then after the discussion a little bit, and I feel that, yes, the task force, because of task force, those kind of entering has been limited. And I want to see, as a citizen, as a resident of the Princeton, I want to see this shop has to be, the impact has to minimize, and the location have to be very discreet. That's my feedback. But thank you all for tonight, and it's been a long night, and I really appreciate your time and patience. Listen to us.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and really appreciate that. And just for context, I think my notes are accurate. We've had 11 speakers tonight, of whom 8 have had some pretty strong concerns. At our past public meeting, I think we had one person who had some concerns and many who spoke in favor. So you may come, and we haven't done a survey, and as I indicated, we're not going to do a survey, but again, 78% of the voters in this community did vote in favor of legalizing cannabis, and that has definitely influenced our work. But what you have said tonight will also have an influence on our work, and we encourage you to stay involved. And this meeting will be on our website. You can share it with other people in the community. We are open to your comments and to your input. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're good. All right.
Sure.
Thank you all so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Really appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.